Just started recording to the cloud for securing a workstation's best practice. Overall, we have to understand as IT professionals that we must take security very seriously because obviously the client's valuable work is in there. Could be actual product code, could be the company's finance, not to mention that the actual PII that might be stored in these servers and or computers. The user is the greatest threat. At the same time, the greatest in the best to make sure you are the weakest link in security. Unfortunately, within the security chain itself, whether it's to harm them or be that they by mistake got some type of malware, social and engineering stuff as we learned, or just simple mistakes that they could just obviously avoid, for instance, phishing. The workstation, unfortunately, is a digital arm, and the user is the one that's causing the problem here when they themselves accept this type of malware, accept that adware, or actually download the Trojan themselves. We could do the best we can to lock these things down, but if we do that without actually training them and ensuring them they know the best practices in their part, we're going to have a lot of issues. During the session, our ultimate goal is to be able to describe how CompTIA's 5 main best practices help us and identify the common pitfalls when we're securing it. All right, 1 second. As for the 5 best practices, anyone know those by heart yet? Or probably read? Password best practices, for instance, account management, disabling your AutoRun, data encryption, and patch update to just name a few. So let's dig a little deeper. Within here, we're looking at customer focus because the customer ultimately is the one that's going to be impacted here. So we need to make sure and listen to the actual customer on what they want and need, because sometimes some of these customers are not even looking or care about if the password is complex or if the password needs to have an age. So we need to understand exactly what we can and cannot apply. Can someone give me at least 3 examples of a strong password?
Something with an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, number,
Characters.
and a
Okay,
mix.
that's called complexity, right?
Yeah.
What's another one?
Long.
The
Oh, the
length, yeah.
length, right? The length. What's the next one?
If it
Yeah,
has numbers and symbols.
that would be complexity, I
Oh,
believe it
okay.
falls under. We're talking about the little check marks, if you guys remember. There's little check marks that I can do with the password. So we
Oh,
got the length,
sometimes they can't be the same as before.
history. Thank you. Password history.
The change frequency, like how long.
How old it can be and well, how old it can be before you must change it. And there's the one that is how old it can be before you can change it. So that makes it different, right? So those are the things that we need to remember and understand, because inside the exam, you should understand all the different features as an admin when it comes to password, what I can do to make them strong. Obviously, the password history is one of the features that they have there to ensure that the person doesn't use the exact same password again. You could actually choose how many histories or how many times before they can actually use it again. What are some of the steps we should take to manage accounts themselves, such as increasing the security in your data itself. What can we do to manage the accounts? What should I actually do? Should I just give the account the access? Should I always give a specific user account access? Do I ever do that? Do I give a user direct access to something?
Give them
Probably
the
not. The minimum permissions for the
Agreed.
workstation.
Agreed. Okay. Do I give, let's say the person only needs read only and I'm in a role-based environment. Can I give that user directly them read only to that folder?
I think it's possible to give directly to that folder, but it's better to create a group and maybe there will be other users that need the same permissions.
Agreed. And that's the ultimate goal here. You just hit it right on the head. Can you do it? Yes. Should you do it? No, that is not the proper way of doing it. You should create a group. And as she just stated, you just don't know what's going to happen if the next 10 people that come in, they only want read only. So you name the group exactly how it is. It doesn't have to be that it's only for marketing. Maybe there's going to be a whole bunch of visitors that it could only have read only. And that's going to change throughout the months. Some new guy comes in or something, and you're going to be adding. So every time you're going to add it directly, all those different folders that they need. That would be very time consuming if he's got about 10 different locations, folders, and servers to go to. Now I only add the group once, and whenever somebody needs that exact same access, I add them to the group. Everything that I did to that group applies to him. Now I don't have to chase everywhere else that I applied this group to. As for personal responsibility, that is key thing here. We need to be personal responsible, make sure that we audit these and manage these accounts properly. We should obviously encrypt files and folders when necessary. Specifically, what files or folders really need to be encrypted? Can someone give me a example on when you know for sure this data should be encrypted? I shouldn't even have to ask the user. No doubts. I'll even give you a bigger clue of one that I'm
Personal
looking
information.
for. PII. Thank you. That's one of them. I'll give you another clue of something, and this one would be the whole machine. What type of device would be the whole machine would
Server?
mandatory? Ooh, that one's stationary and locked down with hopefully some sort of entry into the room. We're looking for something that someone has very easy access. We're looking for obviously someone that wants to do damage. So if someone's going to have very easy access to this device, and it will be obviously somewhere that I can have easy access at all times, depending obviously.
Was that drive?
I'm sorry,
The drive?
a driver?
like
I'm
the
looking.
physical machine.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Would it? I'm looking for. We already mentioned a server, so we have a server. What other type of computers do we have besides a
Oh, like a
server?
laptop.
Thank you. A mobile
Oh.
device. I'm not going to give you the actual answers, guys. I'm going to torture you until we're there. Just want to make sure that's a laptop, mobile phone. That's a company phone, and it has to be encrypted. These are questions that they're going to ask you. They're going to actually put scenario-based questions where they're going to tell you, what should we do in this scenario with this device? So we should know that hopefully laptops, the whole drive is encrypted, right? Versus on a server, as Ayana alluded to a moment ago, within that server, and somebody else said PII, I think it was her again, maybe on that server, that entire drive with all that, or the folder that's in there, that contains all that information is encrypted, including the actual database. So there's obviously a listening to the customer and their needs, and sometimes identifying exactly what they need from what we were listening and questioning them, so that we can obviously be able to identify and where to go. As we mentioned a moment ago, we're going to be covering password, account management, disable, auto run, data encryption, and patch update overall. Within here are best practices for this. Obviously, there is the 12 or more characters. Obviously, that the longer the better, because it takes more machine time for each character, just like the lotto, right? The longer the quick pick 2 is easier to hit than the quick pick 3. Quick pick 2 only has 100 alterations, while the other one has 1,000, or is it 10,000? Yeah, 1,000. You get my point. The more numbers and or combinations you have in there, the longer it is, the more processing power it requires and the more time. If you combine that with the uppercase and lowercase and special characters, as we stated, that'll even make it harder, because now it's not only now the alphabet, which was what, 26, 28 characters, depending which alphabet you're using, and it's including numbers and any other digit. As for don'ts, we are fully aware, hopefully, not to use anything that can be found in a dictionary, hence why a dictionary attack is easy, because you're basically using the whole dictionary of, or whatever it is in your dictionary table of words. So whenever you use the human language, be whatever language, because remember, if they know that you know German, they might actually be slick enough and have the whole dictionary for German too. Therefore, don't think you were slick. They got you. So we want to make sure we use things that is not consecutive. Want to make sure we use anything that is on the keyboard consecutive when we're serious about any type of password. Questions or doubts? Next here is the actual expiration. Obviously, the longer the expiration, the longer you have given me to break into this password. So depending on how much appetite for risk the company has, then obviously that will determine exactly what amount of time before you must change the password. The frequency again depends on the level of security and the needs. The history, the same thing. Do you want to go all the way? I think it's up to, is it 24 the max? Is it 24? I don't remember how many histories it is, but you can put a lot in history. And at the same time, you could put a lot in the amount of days before they need to change it. We want to be careful. Obviously, sometimes the customer, if we do that, they get frustrated. That's not what they wanted. They want to make sure. So you can be careful with the mom and pops. Obviously, the mom and pops have a bigger appetite for risk, because of the fact that it saves them in time, and it saves them in problems with users forgetting the password and all that. So they don't really care, compared to the Fortune 500s, where they can't. The risk outweighs the cost associated if one of these accounts gets hacked. Changing the default username and passwords is a must. As we said, admin is a administrator, admin. Those are just easy. We know what they are. We should be hopefully disabling them and or changing the name of them. Any questions? Whatever device, be that it is a server or it's a router or an AP, you must change the password. You need to understand that that default password and all its variances, if they ever change the password from that manufacturer, is public knowledge. You just simply go out to that manufacturer and ask them, and they'll give you a big dictionary of all the models, their suspected password, and their alterations if they ever came out with that specific model, any other type of password. And obviously, if I have it in my hand, all I have to do is hit the reset button too and just turn it back on, hold it. Oh, that's behind. As for BIOS or UEFI BIOS, obviously, again, these are things in case the user and or client wants it. It is a nice thing, obviously, to stop it. But as we know, usually if we take out the battery, this is just obviously not going to hold. As soon as we take out the battery and or short it on the motherboard, we'll be able to get in. As for your screen saver password, hopefully that is a must. Again, depending on the appetite of risk and or the client. Some of them have it 5 minutes. I remember in sales in UPS, they couldn't have it less or yeah, they couldn't have it more than 2 minutes. Could you imagine how annoying that is if you're reading an email and you forgot to move your mouse around? It would lock on you. Or if you were working on something and somebody called you and you just started looking, it locked on you. But it was a must because they had sales figure for the entire region, millions of dollars are sometimes in their face. So the risk of that information getting released to prying eyes outweighs obviously you being comfortable or not moving the mouse around in less than 2 minutes. Any questions or doubts?
Nope.
Here we are for the last slide in this information. As we stated, we have your password history. We all the way up to 24 from 0. Then you have your default, which is usually 42 in the password age to 999 bottles of beer in the wall, which is very cute. Now, be taking note, obviously, within here, though, the minimum password age can only go up to 998. Since the history or the maximum is 999, then the minimum age would be 998, from 0 being the default. Questions?
Is it like more recommended to use like an Apple keychain? It's like where you store your password. Is that like a more recommended to do it to just have it in a notebook somewhere, like all your passwords for your accounts?
There's usually one place that people tend not to be able to get that information. I mean, there is way like waterboarding, which tends to leak out that information. But if you store your password here, it tends not to leak out anywhere. But as for writing it anywhere, I do not do that. I don't write my password anywhere, and I don't use Credential Manager, and I wouldn't use uh, keychain or whatever that is. I just reset my password.
Very old school.
Oh no, you're not. I just don't trust the computer. I know who he is and what I can do with him, so I just don't. He's a blabbermouth, really. He just can't trust him.
Okay, sounds good.
Now, once again, if you want to use it, you could use it. It's a feature that's there, and I mean, it helps obviously because it makes it easier for you to log into places. But I tend to stay away from those things. As for password minimum length, usually the default is 0, but the recommended obviously would be 14 or more. Once again, it's depending on the appetite of risk from the company. Some of them go only 8, but 0 should not be a left. We can only pray that you change that 0 to a meaningful length. 0 means that they don't have to have a password. In other words, they can leave it blank. That makes sense? All right. Password must meet complexity requirements. When it's just obviously turned on, there's 3 of the following that it must be able to meet. In other words, when it looks at the password, we need to remember these cases, just like we have to remember when we're looking in security, something you are, something you have, something you know, and all that. This is the same situation. Now we got to remember the different scenarios. And if we can remember that this is going to reference an ASCII chart, it's going to know the area that you're in. And it looks at that given area and compares and sees if you meet these areas, which is uppercase, lowercase, special characters, numbers, and any Unicode. Enye, for instance. Question? All right. As long as you meet 3 of those, it'll allow you to create the password. So if you don't have at least 3 of these, it will reject it from the actual user. Next here, we have restricting the actual user's permission. As we said a plethora of times, the principle of least privilege applies to no matter what. Bare minimum. As long as they can do their job, it's all I can do. I don't need to make their job easier so that they can be able to download the latest and greatest little search engine to their browser, because this is not their house. They're at work. You don't need an add-in. Use it as is. If it was needed, the actual patch management and or distribution server would have installed it or sent it to you. Assign obviously always permissions to the groups. Only groups should have permission. As earlier Natalia said, yes, you can give a user a specific thing. And obviously, when they log on to their user, the PC is automatically giving them user access to their thing. We're talking about stuff that has to do with servers or shares. That's what we're talking about. So we give them that type of access, even to parts of their computer. So now they have access to the users folder, but from the domain group policy, you can say where they can touch their own computer. It'll force it every time they log on, forces the group policies and updates them, and they won't be able to go to see Windows, for instance. A regular user on their own PC is able to go to see Windows. They have basically full control and visibility. But as for a domain admin, you'll be able to push down what groups can do what. Next, you have your logon time restrictions themselves, which says exactly what time you can and cannot come in, including on the weekends or not. Questions? Next, always. If I see this, I will kill you. Disabling guest accounts. I really don't understand why they still have this, including the administrator. Obviously, that's needed when you're first coming in. But nowadays, from my understanding and my usual expectations when I log on to a Windows computer, it asks me, who am I? And as soon as I say, who am I am administrator at the same time. Therefore, I don't know why they still create the administrator account when I first boot up and when I first come up, is asking me who I am and already giving me administrators right. But obviously the old Windows, it always comes like that by default, and it has administrator and guest. We need to make sure we disable rename if possible, because obviously if anybody that's savvy enough and can get in there will be able to obviously hack away. Obviously, failed attempts is another way we can actually stop the actual hack. So depending on the amount of times or how much that person drank on the weekends, you can actually stop how many times they're able to log in. As for the timeout and screen lock, This is obviously a great feature, depending again, the appetite for risk. Everyone understand what an appetite for risk is. I keep on blurting that out. Appetite for risk is how much risk is that company willing to take compared to the inconvenience of adding these features. Is 10 minutes sufficient for them? Is 5 minutes sufficient for them? Is 1 minute sufficient for them? We need to identify how far or how comfortable they are with this risk. If they can care less, then there's no timeout. If they can't, if they want to more or less have a little bit of risk, maybe 10 minutes. They can't really risk it, maybe 2 minutes, right? Because 1 minute is really annoying and it won't work. Somebody will kill you by the end of the week. Questions? All right. Next feature, which is a great feature. It really was. I mean, it was heaven sent because it was so annoying back in the days when you first put in CDs and then you had to go and chase and look for the little setup exe. And then some genius came up with the AutoRun inf and voila, you could actually install everything and you don't have to touch anything and it automatically runs. And then voila, some genius said, wow, why don't I just go ahead and create something that auto run and give you a virus? Since you said that I can do it, why not? Therefore, unfortunately, we should disable this feature unless if we know that this thing is in a very locked location and we just don't care. Once again, this is your appetite to risk. And if you really don't care and you just want to go ahead and install, this is including that I'm aware of, even USBs. Questions? All right. Data encryption, as we've mentioned before, we have the whole drive level, which is facilitated within Windows by BitLocker. And we have the individual files, which is the EFS. Obviously, depending on your needs of the actual customer, we can either encrypt the whole drive or we could just encrypt just the specific folder. Questions or doubts?
No.
The only main the variance of BitLocker and EFS is the processing. And one is in the beginning while the other one is at the end. What do I mean by that? Obviously, to in BitLocker, to be able to encrypt the whole drive, it must encrypt the whole drive. So it's going to take a very, very long time to do that once. Now it's done. Any new file that comes in, it keeps on, since the drive is encrypted, everything is encryption. It stays encrypted when it shuts down. It opens it, but when it shuts down, it locks the whole drive back into that encryption state. Versus EFS only encrypts the files or folders that you wanted. Therefore, the encryption time at that moment is fast. But now let's go the other way around. I booted up the computer, it brought it up, and BitLocker, everything has been decrypted. I want to go and look at the file, it's decrypted. It's here. I got it. EFS, every single file that you wish or data that you want to go and look at, it must decrypt it at that moment because it is encrypted. That's the variance between BitLocker and EFS. Questions or doubts?
Would you in the does like BitLocker and like EFS also relate to like NTFS and like who has like access to look through say like certain files? So say if on a certain file you put the EFS, right, you encrypt it. Would you in a way have to like assign, okay, well, I want these users or this group of users to be able to use
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
or, like, go
Yes,
into it?
NTFS applies. Yes, the EFS is the encryption to the files,
Okay.
and on top of that, it still has the securities that's in there already.
Mm. Oh,
So
okay,
only
okay.
those users that are already on the security will be able to go in there and decrypt the file. Otherwise, that nobody will that's not in that security tab will be able to even get to the file to begin with or decrypt it. So that's where it's dangerous. So let's say somebody for some weird reason moved that file from here to there and maybe moved it to an NTFS. So let's pretend for sake of another folder, but they moved it into from accounting to marketing. It's gonna keep. We said move is keeps everything, right? So now it's gonna bring everything and move it and throw it inside that other thing, and then everybody that's in there can't see it because you moved it. So whatever it had, it kept, and you really wanted to copy it so that when it throws it in here, it applies the actual rights that were in it. It's going to keep it encrypted, but it's going to apply the rights of that folder to that so that that group can actually see it.
Okay, I see.
That's the major difference between a move and a copy. One keeps all the rights from where it was, where the other one copies it and throws it in there, updates the rights, and leaves the original copy where it was with its original rights. But the new place where it put it, it actually inherits the rights that's in that folder. Hence the
And that's
key
copy.
word inheritance in that little check mark to make sure that everything below it has its inheritance. That's the reason why you have that check mark. So whenever somebody creates or copies something in there, it's able to apply its rights to it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other
So
questions or doubts?
if copied, the rights are inherited.
When
And
you hit
without-
copy from one folder to another, it leaves the files as is, and then it makes a duplicate and throws it into that folder. But the folder that it throws it into, it adds that folder's rights to those new files. So whatever is in that new folder, whatever his parent folder above him, as long as the little check mark of inheritance is on, it will give it its rights. Now, if I move it inside that folder, it's going to move it, including all of the rights that were back there. And it's not going to leave any copies behind. It's just going to move the whole thing over with rights and everything, which is very dangerous because obviously now you just mess with the inheritance and everything that's in there.
Okay, understand that. Now one more question. You said about check mark that if inheritance check mark is on, what if it's not on?
If it's
What
not
would happen
on,
then?
it should, that I'm aware of, if it's not on, it should have the rights of where it came from. The inheritance is off. It should come with the rights because there's nothing, I
Okay,
believe.
so it's not going to fall back to default or
Oh
something like
no,
that.
I'm sorry. If inheritance is not on this folder, it'll go to the first folder above, I believe. Whatever folder above, which might be even root. So depending on where it is, it'll probably grab and throw that on him. If it
Okay.
doesn't have any rights at all, somehow, then it may bring the rights from over there. But that I'm aware of, wherever there's a check mark, which usually C or D is gonna have a check mark. The subfolder within C or D may not. So it'll grab and throw whatever C has onto it. It'll give it
Okay,
C,
I see.
whatever the root is,
Thank you.
as default to wait maybe until you decide what you want to throw on it. Questions? Always play around with it. You should actually do that in the virtual machines, those type of questions, and make sure and see what happens. On purpose, create a file, give it certain rights in one folder, copy it, take off inheritance, do the same thing, copy it, see what happens. All right. Number 5, patch and updates. While many patches themselves are there to obviously repair something. It doesn't mean that it is for your PC. We need to understand that some of these hot fixes may have nothing to do with that type of Windows, or it may damage that type of Windows that's not a cookie cutter Windows. Obviously, for the best results in itself, patch management usually has a system admin to be able to help and alleviate this problem, specifically on that Super Thursday, or God only knows what day nowadays that they do these things. So the WSUS server is the one that was created to be able to facilitate the process itself. Inside the WSUS server, you can actually choose, after you obviously hopefully tested in a testing environment and in the staging environment. Now you can go into the actual WSUS and actually go and update it and push it down to all of those specific users. Questions or doubts? Okay. Common pitfalls. The day somebody tells you that no one has forgotten their passwords, you might as well, I mean, I don't know, jump off a building because that they're lying to you. I'm not sure what to tell you. That is the most common issue that we have with users. Unfortunately, because of of the fact, even yourself can forget what the password is. Hopefully, you got a way out. And a lot of the times nowadays, these systems give you the capability of resetting your password with just, especially the Fortune 500s, just answering some HR topic questions. Obviously, a lot of the times, if you're doing this at home or on a side business, I could only hope that you do have and had created a actual admin password with, or user, right? Because we said not you as the user shouldn't be the admin. You should have an admin user with a default password that you usually get in with. But that's, again, that's you at home. In these Fortune 500s, there's usually a GUI application that allows you just with ease to reset it, as we've seen in Google and some other places. Obviously, too much encryption itself may affect the actual PC performance. This is why they said the ones that are mandated for full disk encryption would be a mobile device, because, again, the appetite for risk and exposure at that time is so far, the risk and exposure there is so high that the appetite for risk has got to be low. I can't really risk it. So therefore, I must encrypt the whole entire drive. I understand it will obviously affect the actual performance of the actual drive, but at the same time, I am not risking that type of information getting leaked out. As for updates and patches, as we mentioned, not every update or patch will be required. Some of them are just nice to have. So therefore, we need to understand before we do this, and that's why us as admins, and depending on where we are within a given company, we may wear a lot of hats or we might just wear one hat. And one of these hats is ensuring that we do proper testing of patches and make sure that the ones that really need it do get updated versus the ones that don't need it don't get messed up. You'll sooner or later understand, because of the fact that all these machines look identical. All these companies will buy a certain model of HP, but then unfortunately, this patch cannot go in that build. For some weird reason, it just won't work because of that ingrown application that was created, and somehow it is affecting that internal application. Hence why we must make sure that we download, we test in a testing environment, we test in a staging environment, which is like a scenario where we try to act like if we are live, and last we do in a live environment. Question: which of the following is true about passwords?
C, by default, accounts with a blank password cannot log on remotely.
This one?
Yeah.
Okey dokey. Next one. After determining the scope of a user's job, what is the next step in implementing the least privilege?
That is A, determine the minimum set of privileges needed to perform the user's job.
I agree.
All right. Number 3, what should you do to secure a laptop you are sharing from theft? This is interesting.
I would say A because it was referring to from theft. They don't say specifically if it's like data theft, so I don't think BitLocker or EFS would work in this scenario.
You're darn
That's-
tootin', right? That sounds like a trick question, right? Is it secure it from you are sharing from theft? So you're sharing it, and then I guess your best bet if you don't want them to run off with it is to put a lock. Alrighty then. Number 4, which of the following is true about guest account in Windows 7?
Isn't it C?
C,
I'm gonna go with C.
Okay.
Like I don't think it's disabled by default, so you have to do that.
Ooh.
yeah, right. I feel like that one's the best of the ones that are listed. C.
Yeah, because the C, B, and D, it doesn't rule those out, but C and A, out of C and A, I think
Let's
it's
go.
C.
I think it's only disabled by default on 10, right? It's disabled by default on one of them, but I don't remember which one it is.
Well, that would be administrator. Is I think by default on 10. We're not there. I don't know. Well, we can say not rename it. Number 5, which password policy setting allows you to configure how many new passwords must be created before the old one can be used?
Is it C? C password history?
See, password history. Woo! All right, let's go check this out then. Well, apparently we got one. Let's see. So default, minimum, D bars. It's disabled by default. And that's why I think I even made a joke. I wouldn't understand why you would actually enable it in the first place. But in itself, if we go to Pepe, wherever Pepe is, where's Pepe? Oh, Pepe, where'd you go, Pepe? Man, Pepe, come back. We like you. All right, so let's go check out Pepe. See how Pepe is doing. Oh, but this is enterprise to top it all off. Guess it should be one of the good ones. What the? I didn't ask you to do that. Why'd you do this? Thank you. And if you guys would have probably caught it Is guest here? Do we see guest?
I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone installed the Windows 7, right? Did you get
So
it
yeah.
by
So just
default?
remember, by default, automatically guest is already uh disabled in Windows 7. Let's go manage users. Let's see this thing right there. Manage another account. You blind bat. Get yourself some new glasses. There we are. Here's guest. And he's there. But he is off. Cool. Any other questions, Stouts? Thanks. All right. Cool.
A question. Is it like that only in Windows 7 or 8 and 10 also?
From 7 on, it should be disabled, and I think on 10 it's gone, isn't it? There's no 10 on guest and 10, is there?
I have to check. I'm not sure either. I
I
just
don't
know
think
it's
so.
disabled by default now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
by
I
default,
don't see it here.
because of the fact that once again, when you're setting up these machines now, it's asking nowadays for your
The internet account.
your internet account, and only the ones that are in your family or whatever you choose to add will be added. So you can still see my thing here, right? I've never really added my children to my computer, but you'll notice since I did allow them to go in to all the computers, although they've never logged in, they're here. They're able to log in. I can go change settings, and I can go and manage my Microsoft account. If I log in here, I'll be able to, with ease, manage this whole family. I can add another family member. I can remove family members. I can add other users. This is obviously the home one. As for the enterprise one, that would be similar to this, where you would be on a domain and everything will be controlled within the domain. Any questions?
No.
Alrighty then. Oops, did I close? Next slide, please. I think I closed it.
Next
If you don't
slide.
mind. Yes, please.
Got it. Well, I think that was the last slide, though.
No, I think you should have at least an overview for me to look at, if you don't mind.
Okay, hold up. Let me go back. Pew. All right, I just moved it.
There we are. That was very kind of you. Hopefully by now we should be able to describe how we would apply the 5 CompTIA best practices. And those are in reference to the password best practices in all its glory, be that its age, history, complexity, length, right? Disabling auto run, data encryption, patch, update management, or account management. We need to very much take this very seriously. As IT professionally, security is one of the most valuable things that we're going to be asked to do. And the better we're able to do this and provide this type of service, the more serious they're going to be taking you in the IT world. Obviously, as we stated, one of the reasons why we should be very knowledgeable in this and understand this is because of unfortunate that of the IT10 ID10T errors that we may occur, and the user is the weakest link, be ourselves or the actual users in it. Obviously, that just breaks the whole security chain, no matter how hard you made it. Complexity of passwords and or encryption. If in fact, social engineering or any other type of ways that they were able to circumvent this, and we don't train the users of proper security, proper use of these actual equipment, obviously the more trouble that it's going to lead to, including obviously a leak of PII or any other information that shouldn't be getting out there, and unfortunately, maybe even our jobs. Any questions, concerns? We'll stop it here then if there's no other questions or concerns.